Hi from Blue Willow Bookshop in Houston, Texas. I am Kathy Berner, the event coordinator at the shop. We are so excited to host this virtual event with Jamie Sumner celebrating the launch of her newest book. Oh, that's my picture of me and my husband. That's a picture of me and my husband with an alligator. That's fantastic. We're so good. Time to roll.
We're off to a good start.
Happy book birthday, Jamie.
Thank you.
Sharon Draper had a sudden emergency come up, so she sends her regrets that she can't join us, and also her congratulations to you, Jamie, on your book birthday. So please, let's give Jamie a big round of applause. Hi, Jamie.
Thank you.
I'm so glad to see you. Congratulations on your newest book.
Thank you. It's been a good day so far.
Yeah, have you done anything special?
I mean, no, I had thought of things and then I ended up just taking care of kids and doing I'm going to go cook dinner after this. I'm like, I should at least maybe order pizza and not have to cook.
I know. But we're so happy for you.
Great brownies today that have mini Cadbury eggs in them. So that's happening later.
Okay, so like mixed in or just scattered on the top?
Well, they were going to be scattered on the top and then they sunk. But then I told my children it's like an Easter egg hunt in a brownie, and then they lost their minds. So
that is interesting. And do they stay stay? Okay. You knew what I'm saying.
Yes, I do. Solid and perfect with the crunchy shell. Yes.
So I just discovered that they have dark chocolate Cadbury eggs.
Oh, that's what I used.
So Elizabeth Eulberg, middle grade author, lives in the UK now, and she was in town in early March, and I am a Britophile or whatever. So I always love British snacks. So she brought me Cadbury Easter eggs, the British ones, which are different colored from the US ones.
Are they better?
I did taste them side by side and I saw no difference. Just the only difference is in the. I come from a family, like we had pudding week with our children one week where there was a different flavor of pudding every week and you had to rank it. So
that's my jam right there.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
All you need to say. That's so fun.
Exactly. I'm so glad to see people tuning in. Hello, friends from Ohio and Texas. We're glad you're here. So I'm glad you celebrated with brownies, but why don't we start? Can you give me the elevator pitch for Time to Roll?
So Time to Roll, it's appropriate that we're talking about baking. So Time to Roll is a sequel to Roll With It. Hello. And it is essentially, it takes place the summer after Ellie has moved to Oklahoma to help take care of her grandparents with her mom. And they live in a trailer and her grandparents have just been moved to an assisted living. And Ellie's mom has gotten married to Ellie's PE gym teacher / phys ed person. So the premise of the story is Ellie now has to live, her dad, her stepmom, and her half brothers come to live with her for the summer. And she's got to navigate this relationship that she's never had to navigate. And Ellie, if you don't know, if you haven't read the first book, she has cerebral palsy and she's in a wheelchair, but that's the last thing she wants people to pay attention to when it comes to her. And her dad has no idea how to deal with her. So the book takes place over that summer and she somehow gets roped into participating in a beauty pageant. Her best friend, Coralie, somehow talks her into it. And then Bert, their third best friend, becomes their manager, who, I couldn't think of a better role for Bert.
Right.
And so that's what goes down. We have a beauty pageant. We have a dad who's back in the picture. We have a mom who was her person who is now gone off on her honeymoon with her husband. So Ellie's got a whole lot going on.
She sure does. What made you want to revisit these characters?
It's so funny. When I first wrote Roll With It, I had thought about writing a sequel, but you never know. Like you never know if the first book's people are gonna like it. And so I kind of put that on the back burner. I wrote a bunch of other stuff. But every time I did a school visit or any kind of festival or anything, all the readers wanted to know is what happens next. What happens next? What's going on with Ellie? how could we end it where we ended it in the first one? And they just kept asking. And for a very long time, I didn't have an answer because they were still alive in my brain.
Right.
But it wasn't a full story. And then one morning I was out for a run and it literally, I was in the dark because that's how early I have to run in order to get my kids ready to school. So it was in the dark and I stop in the middle of the street. That's not safe. Don't do that. Anyone watching. Because I had the idea and it came fully fleshed, which hardly ever happens. This idea of what would it be like if Ellie got thrown into this thing that is all about physical appearances when Ellie is not anything of it. She's like, no, that's not what I want you to know me for. And she gets roped into one of the most impossible situations. And what would that look like? And how would that be when her dad is there? It just came and I couldn't not do it. And so it was really the impetus was all the fans that kept asking.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you had this idea when you were running.
Yes.
Do you often get ideas when you're running?
That's basically why I do it, because that's when my brain, I think there's some connection with moving your body in some way loosens your brain up.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of like, that's how I get through first drafts and edits and everything else is that morning run that kind of starts things going. Some people can get up and start writing immediately. I can't do that. Like I have to have a warm up to the creativity.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I don't run, but I walk. Like
same thing now.
Up against it, but it's the same thing. And if I'm trying to solve a problem, I'll be walking along and all of a sudden, I have my phone because I'm usually listening to music, but I'll start taking notes on my phone because I'm figuring out a solution as I'm walking. And I think taking yourself away and engaging in some physical activity definitely loosens something up.
And I think being outside just in general, like just getting out away from distractions other than just being in nature. It's huge. Or it is for me. Different people have their different things, but that's for sure mine.
I completely agree with you. You alluded to the beauty pageant, but what made you was it just that idea came to you when you were running? Because a pageant is so antithetical to her, her self, just how her self-determination. And so
her identity.
Thank good Lord. Yes. Her identity. It's so antithetical to that. So was that just something you're like, let's throw a wrench into this, or did the idea just pop into your head?
It was a little bit of both, I think, because the real kicker with this, I think, okay, I got to back up a little bit. So my son, Charlie, has cerebral palsy and he's in a wheelchair, which is why I wrote Roll With It in the first place, because he was starting school in kindergarten and there were no books with kids like him on the cover at all. And I'm like, I don't want him to come into school and think he's the only one, or have kids not understand him in the way that I want him to be, because he's actually mostly also nonverbal. So I just couldn't let that go as his mom, and just as a person in the world, I couldn't let that go. So one of the things as a result of having Charlie and being in the world of cerebral palsy is you get a lot of inspirational content sent towards you, and it can really fire me up, like not in necessarily a good way, when people use people with disabilities as props and inspirational memes, and look how sweet this story is. I mean, one of Ellie's first lines is, everyone thinks I'm sunshine and rainbows, and that's not who I am. And so when I thought about the pageant, it really was this idea of Ellie is going to have to fight back in a whole new way against being used as inspiration for everything. And that to me was what really struck a chord, because I think nobody wants to be seen as like this inspiration. Like they just want to be people. Like we all just want to be ourselves and seen for ourselves. And that includes being treated poorly and also being treated as something that is not multidimensional and just exists to make other people feel good for a little bit.
Right.
So that's kind of where it really came from.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So Coralie and Bert are such fully formed characters. Can you talk a little bit about both of them and then the friendship that Ellie has with them?
So Coralie is a Spitfire. She can be very overbearing, but luckily she has Ellie who fights back and doesn't let herself be pushed around. And also Bert, who just ignores Coralie whenever he doesn't agree, and it drives Coralie bonkers. And Bert, sweet Bert. I don't know where Bert came from other than he is so himself. Like, I don't understand still that he's not real because he's just Bert. He's so Bert. And he actually, I think you might, I don't know if you know this or not, but there's going to be a third and final installment to this series coming out not too far away. It's already written, it's already in editing, and it is essentially, I have no title. It's called Bert's Book. So it's the Bert.
Oh, I'm so happy.
And it takes place their 8th grade year, right before they're about to go into high school. And it is all, I mean, it's from Ellie's perspective, and it's Ellie, but it's the Bert, all the burning questions you have about Bert, it's in that book. So all that to say, those characters to me, I've written a lot of books. There are many more to come that I've already written that are coming out. And those 3 characters, Ellie, Coralie, and Bert, are by far, they came to me the easiest, and they were the fullest, fully formed. And I don't understand. And they aren't based off of anyone. Like, people always want to know, did you have a Coralie? Did you have a Bert? And no, I think they are the people I wished I'd had, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. I love that idea of character development.
They're the people I wished I'd had.
That's amazing. That, it makes me so happy. And I'm so excited to know that Bert is coming.
Oh, it's good. Listen to me. It is like, the cover should just be a giant heart with Bert's face in it. Like,
absolutely. Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
So you've alluded to Charlie having cerebral palsy. How does that experience, being his mom, influence your writing?
I would say it makes me more of a sympathetic writer.
Okay.
I think empathy in that situation, like, I would never claim to understand Charlie's personal experience because I'm not Charlie.
Right.
And I'm very careful to be clear about that whenever I talk about these books, because it's not my personal experience. And my heart is there. My heart is so there, but it's not me. And so I take what I see with him and what we've gone through as mother and son, and then I have readers who have personal experience with it, and I talk to physical therapists and occupational therapists and anybody I can talk to make sure that it's a story that it reflects accurately and true to the experience. Because the one thing I would never want to do is invalidate someone's personal story by getting it wrong.
Yeah.
And so I'm very careful with research and with what I put and don't put in there for those very reasons. But Charlie's the reason that it has the heart that it does, because my heart is with him.
Yeah. Yeah. I think something I'd add, I know I appreciate, and I'm sure readers appreciate, the care with which you write and create your characters and your stories. I think it's also important to remember that this is one experience of a child who has cerebral palsy. It is not the experience of children with cerebral palsy, if you see the distinction I'm making there.
Absolutely, because it's nobody's experience is the universal experience.
Right.
I think that the key, I think about this with every book I write, is to hone in on the things that everybody understands. Everybody understands what it feels like to be an outsider. Everyone understands what it feels like to navigate the interpersonal relationships within your family that are always changing.
Yes.
Nobody, even though we all thought everyone else had it together in middle school except us, nobody did,
Right.
but we all thought everybody else knew, and we were the only ones that missed the memo on like how to get through this unscathed. And so I think there are certain things that we all feel, like that first day of school, where do I sit? Who do I sit with?
Yeah.
And yes, there are specifics with Ellie, like the first day enroll with it when she goes into her new school, and the teachers haven't thought about moving the desks.
Right.
So that she has a place to go in her chair, and making all the students move their backpacks and things like this. Like, so awkward when all you want to do as the new kid is blend in, and then this happens. That's a very specific Ellie thing. But I think any new kid understands that feeling of not knowing where to go. And can I sit here, or is this already somebody else's desk, or, that kind of thing. So I think it's a balance between understanding the uniqueness of everyone's experience and then the universal things that do tie us all together.
Right. And that's one of the beautiful things about your books, is that they are universally about middle grade kids who are going through experiences that many other readers can identify with.
Mm-hmm.
And they also might have a different life experience.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes them so great, is because you're providing windows and mirrors, as Rudine Sims Bishop often says. Mm-hmm. So this kind of leads into my next question. How do you balance, when you're writing, how do you balance that tone of serious issues? Living with special needs, friendship challenges, changing parental relationships, with like joy and humor? How do you kind of, balance that tone?
I think the short answer is called snark, which is what Ellie has.
Yes.
She has that sass. And when you have that kind of attitude about you, it does make it easier to find the fighting spirit and the humor in things. And also for me, isn't that kind of how life works? It's like, even in those horrible times, something funny will happen.
Yes.
Like, you'll be crying and you'll blow a wad of snot out of your nose.
And then everybody's laughing.
Or like just those things, like life is never all one or the other.
No.
And so for me, I think it's that voice that does it. Like Ellie's voice does it. And the one-liners from her friends, they do it. There are some parts in Time to Roll that are really hard. Like when Ellie is around her dad and sees that he does not know even how to hug her.
Right.
Like he pauses and doesn't know where to put his hands. But then we get moments where he tries to be a dad and cook this fish dinner for everybody because Ellie likes to cook and he's trying to do this thing. And he basically almost gives them all food poisoning because he bought discount fish at the grocery store and didn't realize it was discount 2-day-old expired fish. So it's like, you get the hard moments. Oh yeah. Ugh. Anyway, you get the hard moments, and then you get those funny moments that could be dark, but then aren't, because this is absurd. Like you just fed us like rank, and yeah. You ready for dinner now, Kathy? You want some catfish?
No, I do not. This is a question I had, but Ava from Maine also had it. Kind of, what made you start writing books?
Well, so I used to teach high school English before I became a writer. But actually, before I became an author, but before all of that, I really started writing as a young kid. Like my fourth grade teacher, I think fourth grade is when we first got assigned writing kind of long, short, creative stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember she wrote on one of my stories, it's supposed to be like 3 pages and mine was like 10. And it was about this elephant that escaped from the zoo. It was kind of dark. I don't know where I was going with it, that I was dark at age 10, but anyway,
Right.
The budding writer, I guess. But anyway, she wrote on the top of my page, she goes, "You are a writer." And it was an exclamation point. And it wasn't like, "You're gonna be a writer." It was like, "You already are." And she was the first person to call me that. And I just took off running because I felt so validated. And so I kept writing all through, and I was involved in theater in high school. And I wrote a play my senior year. And my theater teacher was so amazing that she let me put it on for the entire school and
Wow.
direct it. And so I've always been writing, but I didn't actually start writing books until after I had kids. And I don't know what shifted. Actually, yes, I do. I think it's that for a very long time, I was writing for myself and for the story. But after something happens when you have kids and your perspective flips and you start looking out into the world and what you're sending them into, and you automatically start thinking bigger. Like, what am I sending out into the world? And I started to think about that with my writing and how I wanted to send it. Like, it was about a message now. It wasn't just about a plot. And I think that's what shifted for me, is I want to send these good vibes into the universe
Right.
for my babies and for other people's babies.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing it because they're fantastic. Tori asks, obviously we know that there's another book about Bert. There's a book about Bert coming, and that'll be kind of Ellie's world also. But will you have books with other characters who have cerebral palsy?
I don't know. I think it would be hard. I don't know. My inclination is probably to say no, because it would be really hard for me to create another character and not think of Ellie. And it would be really hard for me to create a character that isn't the main character.
Okay.
It would be hard for me to create a side character that has CP, because I would want that person to take center stage. But I've written about characters that have other differences, like in Tune It Out, he has a sensory processing disorder. And in Summer of June has severe anxiety that she's kind of working through.
Yep.
So I think I will always write books that focus on kids who feel like they're on the outside, for sure.
Got it.
For one reason or another.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Laura would like to know who sees your drafts first, and at what point does your agent see the manuscript?
Well, see, that's the answer. My agent sees it first.
So before anybody else.
I trust her because she is what I would term an editorial agent. Like, she
got it.
Worked
but explain to the audience.
Yeah, she worked in publishing before she became an agent. I trust her eye more than anyone else's, and I trust her to tell me if this is a good idea or this is a no-go. And then I also trust her insights when she sees a draft and she sees where there are gaps or where like a minor plot needs more development. Or she is my first. I don't show my family. I will talk through plot points with my kids, because they're at that age. My twins are 9 and Charlie's 11. And so I'll like work through stuff with them and they help, but nobody sees it until my agent sees it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And then I send it. Then, okay, this is actually pretty funny. So I just go straight. I go to my agent and then I go to my beloved editor at Atheneum, who has done every single one of my books. I hope she'll do every one after this. She's incredible. Reka is incredible. And then after I send it to her, only then do I send it to sensitivity readers and experts to get that nuance after Reka says yay or nay.
You know what? That makes sense.
Yeah.
That absolutely is a process that makes a lot of sense to me.
And other people work forever before that and get a ton of feedback.
Right.
They have their writer groups and everything else, but that's just never been my process. I don't know. It's hard to share it with the outside world until I share it with those people I trust the most that are experts. Like I want that voice.
Right.
So, yeah.
No, and I guess I would just add, having spoken to or with a lot of different authors, is that is one way, and it's a good way for you, and it's a good way in general, but it's not the only way.
Well, and I will say this. So I have a children's book coming out. It's almost absurd in 2026. Like I can't even talk about it because the illustrator we wanted was full until, so it's coming out in 2026. So I don't know, so far away, but all that to say, because I was so inexperienced in writing children's book, but I knew this was a good idea and I knew I had something good. I did seek out a reader who was a children's book writer that I trusted. And after I shared it with my agent, before I sent it to my editor, I sent it to her and got a bunch of feedback. Because that's not my area. I don't know if it's a hit or a miss. So I did get some great feedback because I felt less comfortable in that zone.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Thinking about your work, do you have something coming up in the fall?
I do, and I just got the early copies. Let me see if I can. Oh, by the way, this is the French edition of Roll With It.
Oh, I love that.
Her little chef's hat.
Oh, I love that.
Great.
That is fantastic.
I love it. Okay. Anyway.
I see it. There it is.
Made for It is coming out in the fall. I'm so excited. I'm so ready for this one. This is about a girl who lives with her mom above a laundromat in a very small town. And it opens with a car accident. Her mom is in an accident and she's injured. And you come to find out that her mom has a history of addiction and opioid abuse. And the daughter, Franny, decides to take it upon herself to take over her mom's cleaning duties, to pay the bills in secret, to prevent her mom from relapsing. And you just see, it's one of those, it's the way I talk about it is it's a book about what happens after addiction, like what families look like and the reverberations beyond it, which you don't really see a lot in literature.
Right.
You don't see, you see it. You see the before, the middle, the day one of clean, sober recovery.
Or moving forward and intentions. Yeah.
Exactly. And so this is that book.
I'm very eager to see that.
Well,
congratulations.
I know where you live, lady.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
I can probably make that happen.
That would be great. So I've got a couple goofy questions, and then people, if you have more, keep typing them in. If you could bake anything for Ellie, what would you bake her?
Bake for her?
For her.
Oh my gosh, this is so hard. It's gotta be unique. I would make her, okay, this is so, I don't know where this came from. I would make her some kind of spiced tiramisu, like a tiramisu, but then add some like cardamom and some like, some different flavors in there that make it have a little zip to it, because I think Ellie would appreciate that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, I like that idea. And I'm like actually kind of tasting it.
Maybe like, yeah, maybe the lady fingers have some sort of like gingerbread cardamom kind of thing going on. You're in love with this. I'm coming up with this on the spot.
Like, what if you do like lady fingers that have ginger and then the cream as the cardamom?
I want
I do too.
I want to eat that.
I know, that sounds delicious. That sounds amazing.
That was a terrible question because now we're all hungry.
I know. So do you watch a lot of baking shows?
I used to. I love the Great British Baking.
Yes. Okay, that was my next question.
Of course. What? Are you kidding? And now I loved it when Mary Berry was on because she was great. She was in the
Prue.
I like Prue, but she's a little, I don't know. I think Mary Berry was a little tougher. Like she just didn't let Paul Hollywood push her around at all. And then I feel like when they brought in Prue was kind of like the lesser of Mary Berry. I know that's terrible. But I will tell you, my favorite that I got hooked on was, there's only one season, maybe there's two, but Nadia Bakes. Nadia, who won.
No, I love Nadia Bakes.
I love her so much.
I will tell you, I very often watch the Great British Bake Off on Netflix over and over and over again. It's so comforting. And there are certain episodes in certain years.
Oh, yeah. They say that people who tend to be overthinkers and who have anxiety or anything like that like to watch things that are familiar to them on repeat. I'm serious, because they know what's coming, and so it's a comfort.
Yeah,
it's kind of like level of comfort. I think that's why I have Ellie go back to, like, whenever she's stressed or whenever she has to work through a problem, kind of like we were talking about getting outside.
Yeah,
she goes back to what is familiar, which is the baking, which is like, I know how to put this and this together and turn it into something. And I think it's that same thing. Like, we look for things that we can predict the outcome of because we need to be soothed in that way. Cooking shows are very good for that.
They are so, I mean, seriously, they are so soothing. I'm, in the middle of I had been like firmly, I'm only Team Mary. I'm not going to watch anything new. And then when I had COVID in May and was living upstairs, I went through all 6 seasons.
I've still seen them all, and the Christmas specials. So
yes, really rewatching.
Yep.
Yeah, I just rewatched the cast of It's a Sin making gingerbread trees. Anyway, let's go back to some audience questions. Sorry, glad we have our same fandoms here that we love. Ava would like to know, and I know this is hard, what is the favorite book that you have written?
That's like when people say, what's your favorite kid?
Right.
Or if, as a teacher, who's your favorite student? In a lot of ways, I think Roll With It is still my favorite because it was the first.
Yeah.
And the most personal, because my grandparents lived in Oklahoma, in Eufaula. My grandfather had Alzheimer's. There's a lot of personal stuff in that one. So that, and any, I mean, the first book, you know what I mean? That's kind of a big deal.
It is.
But I will say I have a book coming out called Deep Water in not too very long. And it's my first book in verse.
Oh, I love a book in verse.
And poetry was my kind of first love. And it's kind of the way I write anyway. Like, I think my prose has a lot of poetry in it, like a lot of rhythm and things like that. So Deep Water was quite fun to write. It also takes place over 6 hours. Like, the entire novel is 6 hours of a day as a girl swims across Lake Tahoe. She wants to be the first open water marathoner to swim across Lake Tahoe. And it's 6 hours of her in the water working through some stuff that you find out about, which I'm not going to say.
Wow. So is that probably spring 24?
Yes. Fall is May for it. And then spring. No. Yeah. And then spring is Deep Water.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
A question from Tori, who has mentioned in the comments that she too has CP, and she has a blog, and she's wondering, just for some advice, can you make a book out of a blog? And if so, like, what do you need to do, like, to structure it like that? What thoughts do you have on that?
I would say all writing can lead to a book because it's you exercising the writing muscle.
Yep.
But you can't write a book if you don't put words on a page. I think that the first step you would want to do is ask yourself what kind of book you want to send out into the world. Is it going to be your personal story and nonfiction, or is it going to be fiction? And if so, that's when you need to start looking at the blog or whatever else you have and saying, is this format the best way to get the message across that I want? Because once you figure out your message, then you look at what you've got and you say, is this it, or do I need to change the format to make it better express that message? So, and of course that's all fixable because you've already got the words. So you just play around with it like it's a puzzle and you see what the best way to present that puzzle is, the best way to piece it together.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I hope that's helpful, Tori. And then I'm going to, before I move to my last question, I'm going to ask one more question from Laura, who wants to know what the editorial process is like. Does your editor, so you send it to your agent and then you send it to your editor, and then does your editor ask you for revisions and then you consult with your agent again before you send it back to the editor? Or how does that all work?
I will say it's unlike a blog, it is a very long process. It's about a 2-year process turnaround. After my agent will usually give me notes and I'll fix it at least once or twice. Then I send it to my editor, and if she accepts it, the first round of edits is called your editorial letter, and you get a hopefully not a very long, but could quite possibly be a very long letter of all the big things that you need to fix.
Like how long? I mean, I know how long because I've seen authors talk, but like,
I mean, it can be anywhere from 4 pages to 10 pages of notes. Now I will say this, Bert's book was 1 page.
wow.
And she attached the line edits to it because I'd been in this world so long. I knew where to go. Where to go.
Right.
So it varies from book to book. But then after you get that and you do a big, huge edit, then you move to line edits with your editor. Then you move to copy edits with the copy editors that like to tell you that there is no street named Elm Street in Michigan in 1975. Like they check everything.
Right.
Or for me, it's always like, your timeline is wonky because you have her 6 weeks doing this and then at 4 weeks doing this. And so they fix all those things. Then you get page proofs, which are the actual how it's going to look in a book. And then you have to go through those for all, like with the fine tooth comb. And then you're done. But any of those parts of the process can take multiple back and forth. So it's long.
Yeah, it
okay,
is.
because every time it gets better.
It
if
does.
you expect it to be perfect the first time, you're never going to write a book.
No. It's, one author.
And you're never going to get better as a writer.
An author said years ago, and I use this when I'm talking to people about writing, an athlete, a professional athlete, has people around them, trainers, coaches, nutritionists, all kinds of support staff. And the athlete trains every day.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole team that supports the athlete. And that's true with authors. They write every day or read or think every day, and they have people around them, editors, agents, critique groups, marketing people, publicity people. Even though it's easy because we all theoretically know how to write or type, doesn't mean it's easy to create something.
There's a reason there is an acknowledgments in the back of every book, because we want to say thank you to all the people that made it happen.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have happened if we were in our own little hole and tried to do it by ourselves.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be what it is.
Yeah. That's a great point too. I'm going to use that next time I speak. I'm so glad to celebrate your book birthday with you. I want to wrap with one final question that is our final question. At Blue Willow, we talk about books of the heart. Can you tell me one, it doesn't have to be the book. Can you tell me one book of your heart that could be from when you were a child, could be when you taught high school English, could be something you shared with your own children, or just even read recently?
There are so many, but I think one of my favorite books that I used when I used to teach, and then I gave to my children, is actually a book that's, I think, speaks to me the most. It's a children's picture book, and I'm sure you know it. It's called Ish by Peter Reynolds, Ish.
Yeah.
And it is about a kid who tries to make the perfect drawing over and over and over. And every time he can't get it right. This actually goes to our last point. And he crumples them up and he throws them away, and he gets so mad at himself because he can't get it perfect. And then he comes to find out that his little brother has been collecting all of these pictures and has put them up all over his room. And he's like, why are you doing this? These are terrible. That's not a dragon. And the little brother is like, yeah, but it's dragon-ish. And to him, all of those pictures are perfect because they're unique and they're special, and because his brother made them. And I love that. I think about that story so much, because so much of life, we try so hard to get things perfect and we try to do everything right. And life is so much more about trying to get things just ish.
Yes, it is.
You know, because that's what life is. It's not perfect. It's just ish. And that's where all the beauty comes from.
Yes, the beauty comes in the mess between.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, now we're both teary.
I know. I'm like,
look up, just look up. It'll be fine.
Where's our tiramisu when we need it?
Oh, friend, I am so glad to have spent this time with you.
Me too.
I'm so grateful for it. I look forward to seeing you in person again. Everybody who joined in, thank you. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for attending from across the country. If you want to buy Time to Roll from us, do it. Or buy it from some other independent bookstore that's close to you. But do it to support an indie bookstore and to support the amazing Jamie Sumner. Have a lovely evening, everybody. Jamie, I'll see you later.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.